It says live.
It says it's live. Let's come down just for the hell of it and the video, just to see if it works. Hello and welcome one and all to the time stream. After a lot of faffing around where YouTube and StreamYards all seem to be using different time zones, and then StreamYards just seem to ignore the fact I said go live the first time and decided not to. But we're here now, and I'm going to relax because I'm not meant to be doing anything really. So anyone who wasn't sure of the purpose of this stream, it's to showcase the writings of others other than me. The only way I'm going to read anything today is if everyone runs out of things to do and I become the basically this fill space. I will just fill this space with stuff if necessary. But we have two far more important authors to set us off, and I will introduce them in no particular order because I'm just going to go randomly. So the first is Old Media Guy, who obviously had me on a stream earlier this week. Is that right, Old Media Guy?
Yeah, it was earlier this week. And that was the stream where I debuted the microphone that you very kindly gave me. So I'm using it now. So thank you.
Brilliant. I'm really glad that's working as well. And yes, thank you for allowing me to yammer on for 7 pages of episode 1, a preview of the Doctor season 13. And then I very callously and foolishly didn't then invite you back to read some of your own work, which is why we're here now.
No worries, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I think I'm going to do all the introductions in one go. We also have the amazing, unparalleled editor extraordinaire and Doctor Who author, John Binns.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Pleased to be here. At last.
I'm very pleased you're here. I specially prepared for your arrival by basically having all of the Doctor Who books that you edited in front of me. Look, there's one. That's Professor Terrace.
There should be 4 in total.
There are. I'm slouched. Hang on. Universe of Terrors. And the next one I think is one I wasn't in, which is Steel Skies.
No offense.
Okay. And then we had Life Science. The one which I was mine was the cover story for it.
Yes. Yep.
By accident, I understand.
That's talking of having 2 doctors in it. That's that's bound to be on the cover, isn't it? Well done.
And of course, 2040.
Yep, can see that. I would say available on Amazon, but it probably isn't now.
They are still available only secondhand because they're out of print.
Yeah. Available on eBay.
Of course, you do also feature in Regenerations Past.
I do.
You do, because you're in the final. You co-authored with me the final story.
I did. Yes.
The three Masters, which was a work of sheer genius, comedy genius.
I think the first multi-master story when we started it, and isn't now. But there you go.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we were ahead of the curve when we started, and then we couldn't publish the damn thing because we've already got multiple master stories. Oh, great, thanks.
Yeah.
But their book fell through anyway, so fuck them. Oh, did I say that? It's past
That's-
9 o'clock.
Okay.
Hey, Yvette, how you doing?
Oh, we have it. I'm the worst at doing the chat. So the whole purpose of this stream is to, in fact, get you two to read samples of your own work. John, you're not in a rush to go anywhere, are you?
I'm not going out, no, because it's quite late and it's my bedtime, normally speaking, in the UK. But I'm happy to go first if you would like me to.
Well, I don't know. Old media guy, do you need to rush off? I'll just find out who needs to rush off soonest.
Let's see. I have about an hour and 15 minutes. After that, I need to rush off. So
I think it's probably enough for all three of us to read if we're going to read. But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be reading for an hour and 15. So how do I decide? I was rudest.
I know. I know. You let Yvette decide.
Oh, okay. Yvette, would in the chat, could you tell us? Would you rather hear John Binns's incredible story or Old Media Guy's incredible story?
And we have to wait 10 seconds because of the lag.
We do, yes. At least I get the responsibility taken away from me, which is great.
So I remember reading a book on probability and economics and such, and they're basically saying the best way to solve certain problems is to get everyone in the room decide on a fair coin and then flip it. That takes care of a lot of different thorny issues. But everyone has to agree that the coin flips decision will be it. And it looks like
Yes.
Yvette stepped away from the mic.
Oh, great. So I can't avoid this. Right, fine. Well, it was Old Media Guy whose feelings were hurt that actually spurned the entire reason for having this stream. So, Old Media Guy, would you like to go first?
All right. I threatened to start off with a story about Sarah Jane being drunk and lusting.
Now, I have to do an inelegant leap towards the camera. I want to highlight you since you're doing the reading. So bear with me for a second. If I can figure out how to do that.
You can see my avatar.
Yes.
Yitzi made my avatar.
Aha! Success. Right. Old Media Guy, I hand over to you.
Okay. This is a story called Sarah Jane's Last Adventure. And I'm going to read to you chapter 2, at least. I'm going to skip chapter 1 because for a preview, it gives away too much. I think for a story, it works fine. But if you just want a sense of what the story is about, it's best to jump in. Chapter 2, called Back in the Attic. Sarah Jane was moving through the house, making sure that everything was in order, despite the fact that, like a bad dream, everything was falling apart. Luke had lost his train ticket to Cambridge. Clyde needed help with his new comic book, although why he should ask her for help, she didn't know. Sky was late for the airport, and for some reason, Ronnie was going on and on about some actor named Sasha Dhawan. On top of everything else, she couldn't find Aunt Lavinia's portrait. Then K9 began repeating, "Mistress," over and over and over. Then Sarah Jane opened her eyes and lifted her head from the pillow of the couch. It had been a dream. Ronnie and Sky had made their flight to America to meet Marie and her dad. Clyde was in London working with a publishing house on his comic book. Luke was at school and ready to turn the world upside down with 0-point energy. And Aunt Lavinia's portrait stood on the mantelpiece, as always. "Mistress," K9 called from the attic. "K9?" Sarah Jane called as she picked herself up and rushed to the stairs. She reached the attic door and pulled it open. K9 stood on the other side, his ear sensors whirring. "Suggest you activate Mr. Smith at once, mistress." His request was surprising, since neither computer cared for the other. "Mr. Smith, I need you," Sarah Jane called. Mr. Smith changed from his disguise as a fireplace into a powerful alien computer, complete with fanfare. However, the fanfare ended abruptly, only to be replaced by alarms. Mr. Smith's monitor flashed red and displayed what Sarah Jane understood to be Time Lord iconography. "Warning, warning," Mr. Smith cried. "Temporal surge event registering over 0.4 on the Bacher scale." "What does that mean?" Sarah Jane asked. "Causality is breaking down, leaving me nothing to analyze," K9 said. "I can confirm that K9 is correct, Sarah Jane," Mr. Smith added. Sarah Jane looked around the room, then out the windows. She half expected to see a hurricane coming up Bannerman Road, but as far as she could tell, nothing was wrong. Even the trees, which had been suffering from blight, appeared healthy. What's causing it? Sarah Jane asked. A time vessel, Mr. Smith replied, approaching these coordinates. A TARDIS, Sarah Jane cried. Unable to tell, K9 added. Distortion entering this time zone, very near here. Sarah Jane, K9, move back, Mr. Smith commanded. The spot where you're standing. K9 moved backward towards Sarah Jane's workstation as Sarah Jane stepped down towards Mr. Smith. She could hear a time ship fighting to materialize. A TARDIS? A Dalek task force? The doctor had told her they'd achieved time technology, lost it, then redeveloped it into terrible weaponry. Was this her time, she asked herself? At least the children wouldn't be here to see it. Suddenly it materialized, a blue police box. Doctor, Sarah Jane gasped. But it was not the normal wheezing, groaning sound that Sarah Jane had known all these years. It sounded as if it were ripping space-time in two, and the noise finally ended in a thunderclap. Even though the flashing light on the top had gone dark, the machine continued to tremble as if it were moving. Danger, K9 cried. Sarah Jane, Mr. Smith said, take K9 and leave the attic immediately. Before Sarah Jane could react, the door to the TARDIS opened, and the doctor reached out with both hands to steady himself in the doorway. Sarah, he said, looking down at her while the TARDIS continued to tremble. Doctor, she replied. She had never seen this doctor before. He was old, much older than even the doctor she had first met, the one the brigadier said was his third. His hair was gray and his eyes were piercing. He looked straight at her and held out his right hand. Come with me if you want to live. Danger, Doctor, danger, K9 squealed. I know, K9, I know, the doctor replied. Doctor, Mr. Smith began, I detect you're at the center of a temporal storm. If a rift should occur, both time and space. Mr. Smith, the doctor began. Whoops, I screwed up that line. Hold on. The doctor reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his sonic screwdriver. Mr. Smith, he said, pointing his device at the machine, we don't need you. The screwdriver buzzed and Mr. Smith retreated back into the fireplace. Sarah Jane wanted to run into the TARDIS and fly away with the doctor forever, but something held her back. Doctor, Sarah Jane began, why have you turned off Mr. Smith, and why are you quoting the Terminator? Force of habit, he said as he returned the screwdriver to his pocket. The TARDIS began to tremble even more forcefully. Not the Terminator quote. I can't stand that movie. Noon time travelers, indeed. I need Mr. Smith to stay quiet because I know what can happen, and he doesn't. Now Sarah Jane realized that despite what she wanted to believe, something felt terribly wrong. Doctor, why don't you step out of the TARDIS and... Sarah, the doctor interrupted, you must come with me, now. Sarah Jane looked deep into the doctor's eyes and found herself moving towards the TARDIS. The craft began to tremble even more violently as the doctor stepped aside to let her through. Danger, doctor, danger, mistress, cried K9 as he moved towards the TARDIS doors. The doctor slammed them shut before K9 could reach them. Sarah Jane turned to the doctor once she'd realized what he had done. The TARDIS stopped trembling as the doctor fell against the TARDIS doors. But before Sarah Jane could say anything, he pushed himself away, ran to the control console, and took off. The TARDIS engine screamed with a sound of iron scraping iron. Sarah Jane was nearly thrown to the floor by the acceleration, but she managed to catch herself, straighten up, and walk towards the console. She looked at him, but he was busy with the controls. Too busy in her eyes. Doctor, she said calmly, what exactly is going on? He looked up at her and was about to say something. Then he looked away and changed the subject. Imagine if the Soviet Union had invaded Great Britain in 1983 and I only found out a year later. Could I go back in time and prevent it? Sarah Jane shrugged. You're a time traveler. A time traveler with rules, the doctor corrected. If I'd attempted to reverse something like that, he said, I would have broken the first law of time. Something's happened, yeah? Sarah Jane said. In the future? 5 years from now. What's happened? Not the Russians, she asked incredulously. The doctor shook his head. Let's just suppose the Soviets had used a time machine to go back in time and invade in 1953. Now that I could do something about. How so? When someone meddles with time, it's a Time Lord's job to meddle back, to undo as much damage as possible. You'll have noticed the TARDIS is acting strangely. The TARDIS jolted again, forcing the doctor back to the control panel. Just a bit, Sarah Jane muttered. That's time distortion, the doctor continued as he frantically worked the controls. A very good sign that time travel was involved with this invasion. The doctor pulled one last switch and turned to Sarah Jane. If we can prove that, you and I, he said with a smile, the world has a chance. But who was it? Daleks? Cybermen? Cybermen with time technology? Never, the doctor mused. And not the Daleks, but before the doctor could complete his thought, the TARDIS landed with a thud that nearly sent them both to the floor. Prepare yourself for a shock, the doctor said, after they had pulled themselves upright. He flicked a switch, and the doors opened halfway. Don't go outside, he ordered. Just look around first. Sarah Jane cautiously moved toward the doors, more unsure of this doctor than she had ever been of any of his previous lives. That's the end of chapter 2.
Wow, hang on. Let me just change this back to everyone on screen. Oh no! I see John is hiding himself. He did a very good muting of everything by the look of it. I'm sure he'll be back momentarily.
If there's interest, I can read chapter 3, but only if there's interest.
I was going to... Can I ask questions?
Absolutely.
And let me just see if I can...
I apologize for the incorrect accents, but I thought if I tried to sound British, I would sound like more of an idiot than I actually am. So I stuck with my own accent, except for K9.
Sorry, I had to re-add him.
Says,
I have a question.
She loves my voice. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Yvette. I appreciate that very much.
None of this is criticism. I just is it the 12th Doctor?
It's supposed to be Capaldi, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. And as that, are you? Have you made this slightly with a mind to the project I was proposing after season 13?
Yes, absolutely.
I thought so. So this is part of the magnum opus that the huge story you'd been constructing for season 14. Is that right?
Yes. You asked for no more than 8,000 words, and I've got 17,400, and absolutely no way to cut any of it. So,
well, we'll just have to look at it at some. I mean, to be fair, you know, I've been putting you off saying I'm not going to look at anything while I'm writing myself. But I only have 2 more stories to write now. I've got episodes 12 and 13, and then I'm done. And hopefully both of those will be done before the end of August. So I will read your stuff very happily, very shortly. John, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was nice, sort of little jovial bits and some borrowed lines. I noticed the Terminator line before you called it out, and it was fun.
Yeah, I was hoping the borrowed lines wouldn't be too awful. But I do enjoy that.
I think I spotted one from the 5 Doctors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then 0.4 on the Bacher scale from the 2 doctors. I thought that one was actually legit. That I could get away with that one because it's a measurement of some kind, saying if you go beyond this point, you're in real trouble.
That's definitely gone menkier than me there. And only John and I will understand. Only John and I will understand the term menk, though.
It didn't quite catch on.
So, only what? Did you not hear it?
What?
Did you not hear me?
Oh, I did. I was just saying that the word menk didn't quite catch on back in the day, back in the 90s.
No, not at all. But I do remember you attempting to make sure we all knew about it.
Yeah.
Does it mean anything like hinky?
It was just an alternate. Go on.
Vaguely, the more of a fan you are, the more of a menk you are.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's
over
like
here,
an alternate who. Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed that because in the rather gloomy aspects of the season 12, the only reference to Sarah Jane is after she's dead. I mean, the time you see her is when the Doctor visits her grave in the graveyard, which is all a bit dark and gloomy because, you know, Clyde is mourning her passing, the Doctor's mourning her passing. Whereas seeing her alive and leaping about and then meeting the 12th Doctor is a nice. I do want to read your story because I want to see how you get the Doctor dealing with someone he hasn't. I assume this is after season 12, yeah?
I haven't decided. It is definitely part of your chronology, at least in a loose sense, that I like your 12th Doctor. I like what you've done with him. And because I heard your stories and because you started out with Sarah Jane already passed away, I said to myself, well, what was her last adventure? And for whatever reason, these elements kind of got thrown into the blender I call my brain, and something came out. I said, oh, I got the ending almost right away. I said, okay, all I have to do is write to that ending and make sure all the links make sense, because I hate it when stories don't make sense. And that's why I say I'm not sure I can cut anything, because I'm very sparse in description, because I can't do it real well, to be honest with you. So I just sort of write it like a script. And yeah, so my wife said, all right, I'll read the first 4 chapters for you just so you don't make a fool out of yourself. And I said, thank you. And she found a bunch of little mistakes, which is really helpful. And I
How
told her,
many chapters are there?
well, they're very short chapters, like 3 pages each. Some chapters are 1 page each. But this has got, what's the last chapter? Chapter 20 is the last. But very short chapters. Other people could write this and make it 5 chapters.
I hate to do myself out of potential material for season 14, but I think you should just turn this into a whole bloody novel, because if you expanded each chapter to be, have the meat of a chapter there, you've got a novel there by the sound of it, and you don't need my series to do it. You could do it yourself.
I was thinking of publishing it myself in case you said, nah, 17,000 words, never going to work. But we'll just
it's
see.
not quite the same response. It's 17,000 words. This isn't enough now for what you've just described. You need to have more of it out there. But I'm sure you could write something else short for the season 14 stuff as well. I mean, if you do that much, just off the cuff, it'll be fine.
The reason this took so long is I needed to get to that ending in a way that made complete organic sense. And if I hadn't had that ending, I wouldn't have written it, because it was an ending. I started writing down a draft of the ending, and I started tearing up. I said, okay, there's got to be something good here. So
it is handy having an ending at the beginning. Often when I'm writing the chapters, I have an idea where it's going to end, and I have an idea of where it's starting, obviously, and I might have a point in the middle. But it's surprising how often when I start writing, I know where I'm heading, and then the story just goes off on its own weird path, and it will meet the end. But it's never quite what I expected. And there's always something that leaps in and becomes far more central and important than I ever expected. And that makes the story. It's just bizarre how it lives and it comes out on the page. Anyway, now, John, you've been sitting there patiently. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or do you just want to read? Or what would you like to say?
I can plow into it. I think the theme, although this is it's a short story and it's more somber, I think, than yours or Media Guy, there's a common theme, which is interference in time and what the rules are. And the story dates back from the 90s, when I started thinking, and I'm still thinking about it now, about the Doctor crossing his own timeline and making changes to his own history.
Wow!
So that's by way of a vague clue as to what it's about. Shall I begin? It's called Death Sentence.
Give me 2 seconds to actually make you big. I'm going to embiggen you. Yeah, to steal from The Simpsons. I'm getting used to this.
It's a perfectly cromulent word.
I am big.
Yeah.
So I'll try not to. Okay. Ready?
Oh, yes. I was just waiting for you.
Okay. The Creator mourned alone, a wretched, crippled figure in the corner of a bare and squalid cell. Time had worn his features badly, and his wasted body filled him with pain. The automated wheelchair that housed him was functioning only adequately, keeping him alive on borrowed time, allowing him the freedom of movement that otherwise he would not have, but doing nothing to relieve the terrible frustration of such a supreme mind trapped in a dead shell. The Mark III travel machine would have been superior to the chair in this respect, the Creator thought bitterly. He had designed it to give the creatures inside it more than pure mobility and existence. The ultimate Khalid mutations would have had pride in their form. They would have enjoyed using it. When the automated larynx aid gave them voices, they would have exulted in their ability to speak, to shout, to scream out in rapturous life. There would be no possibility that the new Khaleds could have felt inferior to their forefathers and the race they spawned, the accursed Thal race, which drove the first Dals from their city and made outlaws out of scientists. The new Khaleds would have had a newfound confidence, part of a symbiotic affinity with the miraculous machines which gave them life. They would have marveled in their own ability, their intelligence, their power, the supreme race, created to rule above all others. The Creator's face twisted in terrible sadness. It had all been lost. The experiments, the machines, even the living mutations he had nurtured, all gone, and with it, his dreams of the expansion of the Khalid race beyond Skyro and onto conquest of the galaxies, all before it had properly begun. All because of an interfering meddler in a small blue cabinet, the machine he called TARDIS, which had appeared from nowhere in the wastelands between the two warring domes. He had been here in the Thal Dome for over a week, taking part in the most recent round of peace negotiations, and still would not reveal his name. The Thal Security Council registered his identity only as the Doctor. Even now, the Thals were negotiating with the rest of the Khalids to put an end to the 1,000 years of war. Ironically, the catalyst for the end of the war the Creator so hated had not been his experiment, but the destruction of it, the destruction of his life's work, the end of the Khalid race itself, and its absorption into the mass of the hated Thal reactionaries. His own people had betrayed him, betrayed the future of the Khalid race. As a result of their treachery, Skaro was to fall to the warlike rule of the Thals. So be it, Davros would have no part of it. The door to the cell glided open with a low whine. The tall, sharp-featured man in the doorway was Nida, Davros' trusted aide. Nida, unlike his previous master, was allowed his freedom in the dome, but was closely watched by Thal officers. He had also been allowed to attend most of the recent Security Council talks, those which related to the Khalids and their chief scientists, and had been bringing back meticulously detailed reports. Davros trusted him for two reasons. First, he had known him since the shell had hit his laboratory, destroying his legs and his left hand. Second, Nida was the only one left from Davros' scientific elite. The others had either defected or been imprisoned, killed trying to escape, or executed. So much for the Thal's love of peace. Since the dissolution of the elite, over 40% of its members have been executed by direct order of the council, many of them without the opportunity for an appeal. The lesser-known members were granted few liberties, the Thals knowing very well that the Khalids would have no particular affection for nameless members of a now resented group. The better-known ones had better treatment. Nida, Garmin, and others had been incorporated into the peace process, although, unlike the Doctor, without the formal status of a council member. It seemed to amuse the Thals to keep the pretense of having the Khalid's blessing for their actions. The position of Davros himself was the subject currently being discussed. That was why Nida was here. The meeting on the Creator's fate had been concluded, and Nida was to give Davros the news. He had already prepared him for the worst. It only remained for him to confirm it. Vote has been taken, Davros, Nida said in impassive tones. It is the judgment of the Security Council that as leader of the experiment to forge a new race of Khalid life forms, you are not to be allowed any further activity in the scientific field, and furthermore, you will spend the rest of your life under house arrest. Davros waited a couple of seconds after Nida had finished, and then said, I'm not to be executed? No, Davros, Nida said. As you know, a vote for execution has by necessity to be unanimous. All 12 members of the council must agree to it. The vote for your execution was taken, and the majority was in favour, but there was one dissenter. Who? Davros rasped. Nida's tone became lightly cynical. In fact, the Doctor was the only member who voted against your execution. The Doctor? Davros spat the words out as if they were poison. That the very man who had ruined his life's work should then save him from a death was deeply ironic, as well as maddening. Who is this Doctor? Nida shook his head. I believe there are senior members of the council who have been informed of his true identity, but he insists on retaining the alias Doctor in negotiations. Davros grimaced bitterly. This new situation was worse still than the death sentence he had expected. He was expected to live his life under guard, without the fascination of science, robbed of all that had ever mattered to him, and he owed the debt of that miserable existence to a nameless traveller whose twisted compassion had kept his only release from him. Death would have been better. I want to speak to this Doctor, Davros said tersely. Request that the council allow me an audience. A short meeting will suffice. Nida nodded brusquely. Is there anything else? He inquired. Davros shook his head dismissively. Nothing. Davros? I'm the Doctor. You requested to see me. Davros looked up to see the small, pathetic figure who had come into the cell. He was shabbily attired, with checked trousers and a colourfully patterned jumper. His face was a mask of wide-eyed innocence. Seemingly hiding the vast intelligence evident in the piercing grey eyes. This was the Doctor? You voted against my execution, Davros said simply. You destroy everything I ever worked for, and then perform this final act of pity. Why? The doctor smiled, a sad smile, and yes, there was pity in it. "It's very simple," he said. "I've always believed everyone should be allowed one mistake." He looked down at his shoes, feigning discomfort at the situation. Davros looked at him with frank distaste. "Any mistake can be put right," he went on. "No point in dwelling on it." Davros looked away and waved a dismissive hand. The doctor seemed to slip out of the door in an instant, perhaps gratefully. So that was the doctor's motivation. He saw his business as putting right a mistake, nothing more. Davros looked down at the remains of the Mark III travel machine experiment, all there was left of the machines, his own chair, adorned with the essential parts for sustaining his life. He surveyed it with sadness, his eyes coming to rest on the switch controlling life support. He paused for a second in deliberation, then coming to a decision, he took a breath and with no further delay, switched it off. And scene. You still there?
Yeah, sorry,
It's very interesting.
I was just in awe of the amazing story, and so quiet for that was like the round of applause pause before the round of applause, and then my hands were full, so I couldn't clap without covering myself in tea. But
the silence and the spirit was intended, Alex. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. Which reminded me, oh yeah, you're a really good author, aren't you? You're a really good writer. You should do this more often.
Well, maybe. I enjoyed it. That was I sort of was quite nervous looking back at that because it's a long time ago, but it's better than I remembered it was.
Yeah, if you make me read a story, which I'm not necessarily guaranteeing I will, but I'm going to pick one that's way more embarrassing because it'll be very old and very short. The reason I pick is because it'd be short, but it would be so primitive and crude in terms of me as an immature twit at the age of which, if you make me read it, which I'm not. But back to you. More importantly, which Doctor was that?
Well, seventh. But
I thought it was.
Yeah. So the fact that it's the seventh is in a sense the twist, because in case anybody hasn't picked up on it, the Genesis of the Daleks, which everyone loves, is a Fourth Doctor story where the Doctor famously goes back to prevent the creation of the Daleks, but then doesn't do it. He doesn't manage it, and in fact, he has the opportunity to destroy the Daleks in their incubation room, and he doesn't. He decides not to do it. And
do I have the right?
Do I have the right? That's the famous scene. And so this is the timing of this is when the new adventures had just started, and we'd had 3 years of the Cartmel Master Plan and Seventh Doctor stuff about him becoming ever more powerful and manipulative. And so the premise is that the Seventh Doctor goes back and fixes what he now regards as the mistake of the Fourth Doctor, and this time he gets it right, and he stops the creation of the Daleks altogether.
And you bring back that wonderful double act of Nyder and Davros, which we all love so much from Genesis.
I do love Nyder. I pondered whether I should do impressions when reading it out, and I thought that I couldn't do Peter Miles. Peter Miles was fantastic, as was Michael Wisher, actually.
They're both fantastic. That's one thing that was so wonderful about classic Doctor Who is they took that stratum of actor and actress who was not recognized by the industry, i.e. worked cheap, but they found the good ones. The ones that should have been paid more. And I kind of hope that, Michael Wisher disappeared from Doctor Who after Planet of Evil. And I kind of hope that's because he was noticed, recognized, and then paid more money and, was above the Doctor Who salary limit, but, went on to do some things that, helped him get his house financed or what have you.
Yeah, and you do see those actors recur. I was watching Carnival of Monsters the other day, which has Michael Wisher in it, in a less eye-catching role, but of course when directors like actors, they bring them back, and as you say, they become part of a kind of a Doctor Who troupe. But it's that role is the definitive Michael Wisher, and Michael Wisher remains the definitive Davros, I think.
Oh yes, wow. Absolutely. He was born.
I don't want to descend into Chimbal bashing here, but I will remind everyone of the one good thing that you can say. The one good thing you can say about Chimbal is, and in my particular case, it's very obvious. It's made me go back and look at the old Doctor Who because I'd never seen the first Doctor or the second Doctor stuff properly. So I've just seen Wheel in Space, so I know where Silver Carrier now comes from. Like, that's where he got the name for the fanzine from. But yeah, I need to keep going through because although I've seen the fourth Doctor stuff quite a bit, it's still been a long time since I watched Genesis of the Dalek, isn't it? The Tom Baker one.
Yeah, and it's, to be fair, there's different versions of it kicking around because the original is 6 episodes, but they did an omnibus edition of it, which was much shorter, much cut down.
Yeah,
And the first experience I had of it was a 60-minute audio version, which I played again and again and again from the ages of 5
oh
to
right, yeah, that one.
16.
Wow.
It's beautiful. It just hones it down to the essential scenes, and it has a bit of narration from Tom Baker as well.
Do you recommend the shorter versions then?
I think, well, it's sacrilege in a way, because it is a great story, Dance of the Daleks. But if you try to watch 6 episodes all in one go, then it will drag a bit, I think. If you watched it, over 6 weeks, then that's what it was designed for, and that's very good.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to watch it all in one go, then I don't know how easy it is to find the shortened versions actually nowadays. But I think there's something to be said for.
Well, you can definitely get the
sorry.
90-minute TV version from the box set of the season.
Yeah, the Blu-ray one.
Yeah, the Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, because in the US you got these weird rammed together versions, didn't you?
Well, what they did was they chopped off the credits from the middle episode. So you got the first episode. They chopped out the bit where they said episode 1. They just went on to the cliffhanger. Then they just edited in the continuation for episode 2. And that worked in the Pertwee and Baker eras very, very well, because they often just reused the clips of the cliffhanger in the subsequent episodes. Then they got to the Hartnell Trout, and it was a little harder because they would simply reenact the cliffhanger. But they got it all right. It was all right.
That's something, because I've watched Hartnell. I'm in the middle of Troughton. There's a lot of missing episodes, and you're going to probably hate my sacrilege here, but for all the ones where the footage is missing and it's just stills, I tend to run it at 1.2% its normal speed, so a fifth faster than usual, just so it doesn't change the pitch, by the way. It just goes faster, because otherwise there is a lot of dragging still image on screen and
Yes.
gaps between dialogue, whereas the dialogue's still perfectly comprehensible at a fifth faster. So that's how I get through those lost episodes quicker.
See, that's why the CD/audiobook version of those episodes are better, because they fill up those gaps with some very nice monologue by an actor who was involved in the production. Probably the best being Web Planet, where Maureen O'Brien covers all those long bits. And in a sense, it's a little more interesting than the original. At least now it is. In 1965, maybe not so much, but it is now.
That's weird, because that's not even a lost story, actually. Unfortunately, all the Web Planet exists.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's not lost, but there's not many people nowadays who are going to sit down and watch it without, paralyzing laughter. I enjoy
Web Planet is the one with the stupid insects, isn't it?
It's the stupid insect one where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, look at this giant planet, Doctor, and it's this tiny little, Lime Grove D where you can see the turn in the set, because the panorama can only go so far, and look at that giant rock, and the rock is just this face, and then they got the camera angle, 2 eyes, you can see it's just a face, there's nothing behind it, and it's like, oh, if you'd had an MGM budget, you could have made something amazing here. So in a sense, it works better on audio because you're imagining how great it is.
Yes, I loved the primitive underground versions of the flying butterfly people. When they moved around, they were jumping around on 2 feet, going top, 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 top. That's how the aliens move. Yeah, it was bad. It was very bad, but I think
it was good for the time.
It was overambitious. That's the consensus.
Yep.
Yeah,
it was overambitious.
I love the way that the choreographer, I can't remember the woman's name, but she gets massive billing in it, saying, the movements of this insect designed by, the movements of this insect designed by, choreography by. I would have kept my name out of that.
Rosalind de Winter, I think.
Rosalind de Winter.
It is, yes. Thank you. Now you say it, I can see it on the credits. Yeah.
Yeah, she actually got a thank you role in The Chase, though, in the Haunted House episode.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
she was in that too.
Yep.
She also did the underwater, the one with Atlantis, the Underwater Terror. Is that the one?
Menace.
Underwater Menace. Yeah, she did all the aquatic scenes. I think were also choreographed by her. All the fish people. That was her too. She had.
When people say Web Planet's horrible, I just think Underwater Menace is so much worse.
But it has Troughton's performance. It has Troughton.
Oh, please.
What was that?
Nothing in the world can stop me now.
Oh, yes. The main villain is practically chewing the scenery. I think he had minor roles in Bond films, didn't he?
He did. And he was actually in some BBC productions where he showed his dramatic chops. And I think what happened with this one, he probably said, "They're not paying me a lot. The script is goofy. What the hell?" I think that's what happened.
I think he was performing as the script required.
Yeah,
Well,
probably.
then let's put it this way: he was happy to indulge the script's finer moments.
Yes.
Although I do like his performance, I just think it's OTT, and it's basically Doctor Who meets Bride of the Monster by Ed Wood. So
that reminds me, back to John and his amazing story, because that's the most important thing. Were you thinking about? You wrote this a while ago, so you thought about it before Capaldi went back and pulled Davros out of the mud in that First World War type setting that was back on.
Oh yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because now we have multiple stories of the Doctor interfering with the Daleks' timeline in various different ways, and of course we've got lots of inconsistencies in the Daleks' timeline, and I think the two are probably connected. That's what I like to think about when I have a spare moment or two, or when I'm trying to go to bed.
Yeah, if you could make it somehow come together through the Doctor's mental, all the messing comes together through the Doctor causing it. Yeah. That would be.
You have an idea. There must be a timeline, I suppose, where he didn't save Davros, and then it takes longer for the Daleks to evolve naturally, which is kind of the way it's described in the first Dalek serial.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
When of course he wipes them out completely before they.
Yeah, I know. They shouldn't come back, but they do.
But they do, which indicates that something's been meddled with, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that your reworking of the story means there's no time war. So I would love to see what would happen.
It's a shot in the time war, isn't it? And once you've got to races with time travel, arguably that war never ends because they keep going back, like the Terminator franchise, I suppose. They keep going back, trying to prevent the latest disaster that's happened, and then the other side goes back and prevents what they've prevented, and so on and so forth. To my mind, the time war started with Serial B, with the Daleks.
Sorry, with which?
With the first Dalek serial in 1963. Stroke 4.
Not the first story, the second Dalek story, yeah?
No, I mean the first Dalek story. That is an instance of a Time Lord, unauthorized, going to Skaro and preventing the Daleks from ever leaving the planet.
Yes.
Yeah. And somebody might have been cross about that. That's my theory. Russell T Davies has said that the beginning of the Time War was Genesis of the Daleks, because that was the Daleks, the Time Lords sending the Doctor back to Skaro to destroy the Daleks at the beginning of their. That
was an active intervention. Yeah.
Which is arguably true, but I would say it's earlier than that.
In a scripting.
Sorry. Well, evil of the Daleks.
Sorry,
it's your stream. I apologize.
No, okay. Well, I was going to say, in the scripting sense, the second, I was very surprised watching William Hartnell for the first time, except for the very first episode I've seen. When you get to the second Dalek story, the fact they immediately have time travel, despite the fact the Doctor didn't reveal it to how it works in the first one, is like, I knew that surely at the time I thought, this is a problem. We've given this other very dangerous race the most dangerous weapon they could have, time travel, straight off the bat. I was amazed that it happened that early.
It's their third story, isn't it? It's the chase, as mentioned earlier, with the Rosalind de Winter cameo. But the Dalek invasion of Earth is striking because it's the first sort of inconsistency in the timeline. You see the Daleks even after they've been destroyed, and the Doctor kind of hand waves it away and says, "Oh, that was a million years in the future."
Yes. So if it was a bit, then they're too advanced. I mean,
you would expect that though with a race that has time travel. You would expect to meet them out of order, and you say, "Wait a minute! Last I saw, you were living in mud huts with a tribal mentality. Now you've got hospitals with lorries and all the rest."
But John is right. It's the third episode where they explicitly have the time travel, but the second one really doesn't work unless they're already traveling in time. But it's not official.
Well, you have to have some form of space-time travel to get from Skaro to Earth because the distance is just too far. And thanks to Russell T Davies retconning, we now know why they were trying to move the Earth, which I thought was just fantastic on Davies' part. I loved
What was
that.
that? I've forgotten.
That they wanted to move was a 23 planets and moons into a particular place, because if you did, they would start moving like a generator, which produced enough Z neutrino energy that you could do all sorts of things with it, hold the universe hostage or destroy it in the case of Davros or what have you.
Oh,
Was
right.
it actually
yeah.
Davros's plan? I can't remember. Davros wanted to destroy reality itself.
Yeah, that's what his plan. I can imagine the Daleks not saying that because they wanted to survive. I can imagine them saying, well, we can hold the universe at ransom. But point being, you have a weapon that powerful, people are going to listen to you.
Yep.
Indeed.
Yeah. But also, the Daleks in Day of the Daleks invade 21st century Earth, and that time they've done it with time travel. They explicitly say we have discovered time travel, and that's how they come to be there.
And so
well, hang on, which one's that?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's the third Doctor story, 1972.
The one with the awful voices.
Okay. It's a fantastic story. Other than that, but yeah, they got terrible voices and not good.
I have to rewatch the whole of Pertwee as well. Luckily, I have all these things still to watch since we have no actual watchable Doctor Who on TV. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to that at some point.
There is a director's edition of Day of the Daleks. I would recommend you watch that one instead.
Is it sort of shorter and snappier?
I don't think it's shorter and snappier. I think that they cut a few lines that just did not work. There's a famous line which is no complications, but they cut that line and maybe one or two other things. But then they add special effects and they add visual effects, and there's a chase scene that doesn't quite work because the Ogrons are sort of slowing down so the Doctor can get away. And they speed that up a bit. And there's a scene where it looks, in the original, it looks like the Doctor just pulls out a gun and shoots an Ogron dead. You're like, what the heck? And they fixed that with re-editing in the new version.
That's like Greedo all over again.
Yeah, the Doctor shot first.
Yes, the Doctor's badass in that apparently. Right. Yeah. So what do we do now?
The voices are redone as well. The Dalek voices are Nick Briggs in the redo.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
He does an excellent job. Huh. The originals sound something like this. It's clearly people who were just told this is how you do it, and they'd never seen it before, didn't remember it, and so they were just doing their best. And the director never said, "Come on, snappier, more hatred, more verve." It's just, all right, you got the lines out. You sound like a dumb computer. Go ahead.
I like the confused Dalek I think it's in The Chase, the one that gets confused about what they're trying to do. And then,
he was Dalek Phillips, that one.
Don't give away anything.
I won't give away anything. I'm sorry.
Good.
Left hand down a bit. We don't have hands, you idiot.
Yeah. So, well, we haven't been going that long. So, does anyone want to read anything else?
I can do chapter 3 if y'all want.
And John, would you like to read something else? Not at the same time, because
I'll put another one if there's an appetite for it. And you were threatening to read yourself, Alex.
Well, if I've got one more out of both of you, I'm definitely going to take those above me reading anything else. But if you both do one more, I'll do another one afterwards. Okay?
Sound good?
Okay.
Okay.
Are you okay for that, or are you going to fall asleep, John?
I will cope. I'll need to get issue 2 of Silver Carrier.
Oh my God, he's got the Silver Carrier. Yeah, I only have one printout of one page of that one story I wrote, which is not even a Doctor Who story. Wait, no, it was a Doctor Who story. Yeah.
Cool.
Very cool. Right, okay, I'm going to embiggen old media guy first, and then embiggen John second. Here we go. There it is. There you go.
All right, chapter 3, Green Nightmare. Sarah looked around cautiously. They appeared to be standing on the bank of the Thames, but the trees, shrubs, and grasses had overgrown most of the buildings. Sarah Jane was surprised to see sheep grazing in the rich grass that had once been a Tesco car park. She sniffed the air but couldn't smell petrol. The Thames seemed filled with water plants. Over the Thames stood a bridge. She couldn't identify which, but there was no traffic. She listened carefully, but could only hear a few voices across the river. "This is London?" she asked. "London," the doctor said, somehow standing behind her with his arms folded, almost as quiet as it was during the dinosaur invasion. "I remember," Sarah Jane replied. "We thought it was a Sunday." "This is a Sunday," the doctor said matter-of-factly, "but I can promise you that the rest of the week is much the same." A breeze blew into the TARDIS, and Sarah Jane couldn't help but take in the fresh air. "It smells marvelous," she says. The doctor winced. "Only if the ends justify the means." Sarah Jane was about to ask him what he meant when they heard someone scream on their right. Because of the foliage, they couldn't see who it was, but it seemed to be someone moving or being dragged towards the bridge. Suddenly, they saw a party of 6 people in green uniforms come into view. They were carrying a man onto the bridge who was struggling for his life. Without ceremony, they chucked him over the edge. The man plunged into the water and then struggled back to the surface, but the plants beneath him seemed to reach up and pull him down. Within moments, he had disappeared into the water. The uniformed group wiped their hands in their jackets, congratulated themselves on a job well done, and walked away. Sarah Jane and the doctor were horrified, but before Sarah Jane could speak, the doctor slammed the doors. "Doctor, what just happened?" Sarah Jane demanded. "The Green Police," the doctor said, then walked back toward the controls. "The who?" "People who are willing to kill in order to keep the planet green." "Oh, come on," Sarah Jane began. "Vegans are hardly the Scientific Reform Society." The doctor shook his head. The SRS were children compared to the Green Police. Sarah Jane approached the doctor slowly. She was trembling a little, but tried not to let it show. "What happened?" "Earth has been invaded by the Crinoids," the doctor began. Sarah's face fell as she remembered their first encounter with them. That's the end of chapter 3.
Ooh. Love the Crinoids.
The Crinoids have invaded Earth. By the looks of it,
I had
they are here to
I'd
stay.
forgotten how short your chapters were, so I wasn't ready for that. I was like, oh my god!
I told you they were short.
You did. So remind me about the Crinoids. I know John knows everything because John is like the uber
Well, it's
Whovian.
American to say, bloody hell.
But remind me who the Crinoids were.
Well, over to old media guy who's using them.
So the Crinoids appear in the Seeds of Doom with Tom Baker and Sarah Jane Smith. And if I had read chapter 1, you'd have had all that. Yeah, you'd have had all that backstory. So I thought for preview I wouldn't do that. Basically, they are in Seeds of Doom. I'll explain them from Seeds of Doom. Basically, are these creatures that they spread there's these giant seeds, like giant mango-like seeds inside of a really tough shell from planet to planet. And where the Crinoids get established, the plants eat the people. So what the scenario was in Seeds of Doom was if the Crinoid that was on the Earth was able to spread its spores across the planet, eventually there would be nothing but grass, trees, ferns, etc. There would be nothing, no animal life above the microscopic level. That was the threat in Seeds of Doom. And I've changed that a bit in this book, obviously, because you don't want to do the same thing twice.
It's very cool. You reminded me, I remember Seeds of Doom, the best one of the best parts of that was, I think, Boise from Only Fools and Horses as the most sarcastic and knowing henchman I've ever seen, and he's brilliant. I mean, he's just too good for the role. As a henchman, I'm kind of rooting for him because he's such a smart henchman.
He's well written as well. It's a trend of henchmen, because you expect a henchman to be a kind of dumb goon, and this guy is really intelligent, but also thoroughly amoral. Which is, and he plays it superbly. So yeah,
I really enjoyed his performance. Yeah, and the writing must have been excellent for that one.
Oh, it was a great story. The only bad thing was the Brigadier did not show up in the end.
Oh, was he meant to? I mean, it's a long time since I've seen it.
I think what was he? Yeah, I think he was. There's a couple of stories where they thought, okay, the Brigadier is going to show up at the end, and the story is his schedule wasn't free. Which could be true. It also could be true that he said, "You're paying me what?" and simply said, "No, I can't." So I don't know. If Doctor Who helped his career so he couldn't show up, I will. As a kid, I couldn't forgive him, but as an adult, I can definitely forgive him.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be a shame for him to be used just to sort of turn up and shoot guns at things, though. Really, I think that would have been a waste.
True.
And there was I think I heard that he was meant to be in the Hand of Fear, Sarah Jane's last story, and he would have been killed off in it, which would have been a great shame. So maybe it's good that it worked out the way it did.
Yeah, they tried to kill him off twice and it didn't work. Just couldn't do it.
You mean Battlefield?
Hitchcock. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, Hitchcock had a film with Cary Grant, and the whole point of the film was, is he trying to murder his wife or not? And in they left the script kind of open so Hitchcock could decide. In the end, he went, no one wants to see this guy be a murderer. It's kind of the same with the Brigadier. You start out with a story about to kill, this is how he dies. And at the end, you're going to go, nah, he survives it. Never mind, I made it up.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm glad we did get the Brigadier popping up from time to time. Was it Sylvester McCoy when you see him and he's in retirement?
Yeah, that's Battlefield.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay.
Yeah, that's they thought of killing him off. They decided not to.
I mean, to be fair, I've only ever seen the Seventh Doctor stories once, and that's assuming I've seen them at all, because there were ones where I just didn't watch them and they drifted past. But that one I do vaguely remember because it had the Brigadier in it.
Yeah. I'm like that too.
Right.
There's what's that one with the clowns? I watched it once in 1990, and I don't think I've seen it since, because it was like, this is not Doctor Who. This is just weird. That was my thoughts at the time. Perhaps now I would think something else.
Is that the one where they're trying to entertain these weird alien family?
Yeah,
it's the greatest show in the galaxy.
The Venn diagram of Weird and Doctor Who, I think, had a lot of overlap.
Yeah. I wasn't in sync with Doctor Who then, so oh well.
It was The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. It's the last story of season 95.
Right. But was that the last season, or
No, there's one more after that.
There was one after that, yeah.
The one after that, they started to figure out what they could do with the series, given the budget and everything else. Like, they finally had some time to catch their breath, and then they lowered the boom, and that was it.
Very sad. But John, back me up here. But when Sylvester McCoy was shot multiple times in the alley, didn't you, me, and Hugh all cheer?
We may well have done. Yes. We may well have done.
Yeah,
and we knew Paul McGann was just around the corner. He was just for that one night. He was terrific.
Yeah, I mean, Withnell and I was we already liked him because of that, and he proved himself to be an excellent actor to play the Doctor, even if the script was a bit meh.
Yeah, and then yes, we got some value from his big finishes and a little minisode, but it would have been great to see more of him.
Yeah. Did you? I really enjoyed his tiny mini episode he did on YouTube. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, Night of the Doctor.
Yeah, it was lovely.
That was really good.
It did show, unfortunately, how he could definitely still play the Doctor right now. Is that this would be so much? Give him a series.
I don't know why TV producers assume that because a show failed, it must have been the actor, the lead actor. I don't get that. He was clearly the best thing in it.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to think of it. Anything else in it that was good? Nope.
He
was.
The control room set, the console room, and the cloister room.
Yes. Nice. So that was cool. Although, if I am going to read the one I'm talking about, it has a kind of reaction to that built into it. But I obviously balked a little at this grandiose cathedral of time that he was in. But anyway, I'll talk about that if and when I read the one I'm going to read. But I think more importantly, it's John's turn.
You've promised now, so we're going to have to hold you to it.
Yes.
This one's quite short. It's actually from Silk Carrier 3, and it's called User Friendly.
Let me embiggen you.
Yeah.
Hang on. You're embiggened.
Turned right. The room was silent as the machine solemnly obeyed its orders, gliding smoothly on the polished metal floor through 90 degrees. It paused, waiting. Move forward and circle left. The response was instant, a short burst of speed moving the metal frame forward a foot and a swift turn anti-clockwise. After 5 seconds, the machine stopped, facing its creator, awaiting a further instruction to test its ability. Now roll over and beg. The man's face at once creased with laughter as the machine looked blankly up at him, and the pathetic little robot tried a couple of times, unsuccessfully, to shift itself onto its side. He laughed again. Oh, am I still there? I thought I'd gone.
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you.
He laughed again. Marius, he said to himself, this is a work of art, a work of art. New, unprogrammed thoughts ran through K9's head as the immense power of his computerized brain came to terms with the fact that something about it was humorous. Come on, boy, what's Daddy got for you then? The optical units of the machine registered a small cylindrical metal object in the palm of Professor Marius's hand. It assimilated in the tiniest fraction of a second that the object was of some importance and that the computer was being ordered to inspect it. Swiftly, it moved forward and leveled its sensors to the correct height, examining the object and processing the input. To Marius, of course, it appeared that the robot dog had scampered up and sniffed his hand. He tittered wildly as he watched the little ears wiggle. Fetch, he said sharply, and the robot dog made an impeccably perfect shift into emergency mode. Swiveling on its base and darting to the source of his master's concern, the cylindrical object which had been thrown to the other side of the room. Moving to the other side of it, the machine pushed it forward at speed, coming to rest by its master, who was grinning stupidly and clapping. Good dog, he said stupidly, patting the machine's head. Good dog. Embarrassingly, K9 found his programming dictated that at this point, the instrument at the back of his mobility unit, that the master called a tail, was instructed to wag up and down for exactly 6 seconds. The machine waited patiently for that time to elapse and then stopped gratefully. It wondered exactly why a super advanced computer with artificial intelligence should be treated like a domestic pet, and why, in the face of a prime directive which said it was to respect the orders of humans and never harm them, it felt furious as hell and had a very real desire to blast its creator to smithereens. The professor was holding the recovered pen between his fingers and tickling the machine under the chin with it. K9 quickly skimmed through its memory banks of the Titan colony, its heritage on Earth, and the irrational sentimentality of humans towards animals. It discovered that the latter was due to the perceived low intelligence of the pet, and quickly resolved to leave the professor at the nearest opportunity. Professor Marius, meanwhile, was thinking how cute the little mutt's face was, while staring into its gunstick. While K9 was sending a signal to a nearby space-time craft, the professor was pondering the manufacture of more such models, and thinking that there couldn't be many people who'd be interested in possessing a robot dog. That afternoon on Titan, the doctor arrived.
Interesting.
That's it.
Very interesting prequel.
Yeah,
You're
I thought it
muted,
would be nice
Dr.
to
Alex.
From K9's point of view.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
it.
it is brilliant. I never considered that K9 would be going, man, I want to get away from this guy.
Mm-hmm. And K9, many people don't like K9. They see him as an some sort of impediment to good storytelling in Doctor Who. And I think, no, K9 just needs to be used intelligently and well and sparsely. I mean, you don't want him in there all the time, but he's a brilliant... Oh, my God! John just fell over.
That was a good drink you had there, whatever it was.
I'm charging my phone while speaking, and it means that it's teetering on the edge of my laptop. But there you go. You don't need to do that.
Yeah. Seamless
It depends
multitasking.
how old you are when K9 first appears, because Alex, you and I are a similar age, and we will have seen K9 when we were the right age for K9, and people who are older and were watching Pertwee and then early Tom Baker and were really enjoying the sort of proper serious Doctor Who. When it comes along with the robot dog and Douglas Adams, they're thinking, what is this? Which it's a matter of perspective. But I've always had a soft spot for K9.
Yeah. We were programmed in a very specific way. I mean, we had Douglas Adams' Doctor Who, and then immediately afterwards, or even almost in parallel, I think, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy itself on radio. When we were both too young to really appreciate it properly, but we then got it repeated ad nauseum for years after it was initially run on Radio 4 until it was just part of our psyche. So, yeah, we were basically programmed as little Douglas Adams bots. And so, yeah, I think we were going to like
I'm
it.
trying to think, I think the TV version of Hitchhiker was the first one I experienced, to be honest. And
I know it wasn't. I didn't see the TV one till years later when they repeated it sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. But the radio series my parents had on I used to insist it was turned on after I'd heard it once at least, and I was just more annoying than my dad in terms of wanting to listen to it all the time, I think. So every time it was on at lunchtime and the weekend, I would demand to listen to it. And then I grabbed every audiobook version there was in the school library. And then eventually I did see the TV show, but long time after it was, new.
Now, have either of you heard the continuation of the radio series?
I've heard most of them, I think, but not up to the same standard. But I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Okay.
Yeah, I
The
guess
one
it might
thing
not
I
be,
heard
but
about
never
it
did.
that I liked is they added an ending to the 5th book that makes it a hell of a lot less bleak. So I appreciate that very much.
But the Holocaust is less bleak.
That's a bad way to put it, really. Oh, it was bad.
I mean, the books really tailed off sharply after the third one. The fourth
They
one is
tailed off after the first
okay.
one.
Huh?
After the first one, they simply marched down in quality like a staircase, with only book 4 starting to, book 4 showing a glimmer. So long and thanks for all the fish. Like suddenly, Adams was interested in writing it again, so his game was up. And then,
My
for
favorite is book
whatever
3
reason,
by far, I must say.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the
book
first
3
two
was
are
supposed to be a
novelizations
Doctor
of
Who
the radio
story.
series, aren't they? And then the third one is I don't know. It's like free reign madness. It's beautiful, I think.
Yeah.
No, it's a Doctor Who. It's a Doctor Who script. He
Yeah.
literally submitted that to the producer, and the producer said, "Hell no!" So he just turned it into a Hitchhiker's book.
Yeah, but then so is Dirk Gently stories. I mean, I admire Douglas Adams' dedication to recycling. So yeah, he's great. But the first 3 episodes, the first 3 books are the best. I think the 4th one is a little slow and turgid. I don't think Douglas Adams was that engaged in it at all. I think he would have happily written the first chapter and the final chapter with Marvin in and just skip that entire middle entirely, because he kind of says, yeah, if you want to go, just skip all this middle bit with the sex and stuff, just go to this chapter and you'll get some Marvin. And I think he was actually quite disinterested, and he was very disinterested by the last one, the 5th one. He just didn't want to write it at all and just tossed it off and say, okay, fine, there you go.
That reads like a breakup book. Like he's literally typing as she's moving her stuff out of the house, and her boyfriend is helping her pack the car. That's the kind of book it reads like.
The 4th or 5th?
The 5th, the one where you just want to end it all after you finish the last page because it's so horrible.
Yeah.
So at least I'm glad in the radio shows they said, "Okay, we're fixing that. Don't worry."
Yeah. So I don't reread the last 2. I do like that Stephen Moore did all 4 of the first 4 books when he was reading them as audiobooks, because it does make the 4th one slightly more bearable, having Marvin's voice reading the entire thing. But it's still not. It's a long way from my favorite. The first 3. He doesn't stay in Marvin the whole way through, but he does do Marvin. But he does do Marvin for the Marvin lines, which is brilliant. I really love those audiobooks. I'm so glad I found them all again and now stuffed them up on YouTube. And they're now my most popular videos on YouTube because they're not me.
I have the same problem. I post something about me and I don't get half the views I get from the other stuff.
Indeed. Now, is it me now?
It's your turn. It's your turn.
All right.
We voted. It's you.
Okay. Since I said I would dress up, I'll dress up for it. Give me a second. But not much. Just a tiny bit. Oh. There you go. I have one of my doctor coats, but not the 12th doctor coat. So there you go. I've subverted your expectations after that disturbing thing you did earlier today, old media guy. But yes, I suppose I should embiggen myself as well. Let me find the thingy. Have I just skipped over it? Oh, you twit. I had it on top, so I'd find it quickly. It's in Regenerations Past.
Nice.
Which is available to buy on Amazon in hardback, paperback, and Kindle form. Probably out of shot there. Let's
Supplies are limited.
No, they're not. Okay. Well, before I start reading the story proper, and that involves me finding it in the book, this entire stream has been a writer's safe space. And I'm not saying that to stop people from beating the crap out of me for reading such a bad story. But it's not a bad story, but it's one that I would not originally have ever republished had it not been for my friend and editor, Eon, that's her YouTube name, persuading me that my old stories actually had some value and worth. And this is true, but they also serve as an excellent example as how writers do not pop into existence as you see them at their best. And I'm, without being too immodest, I'd say I'm probably at my best now, just by virtue of the fact that I've lived long enough to get better by practice. But this story is well old, he says, using the vernacular for the youth out there. This story is very old in terms of when I wrote it and how young I was at the time, and it shows my immaturity. But it should be, it should fill everyone with hope as writers to show that you can be pretty rough and immature at the beginning, and you can still aim to get better over time. That's the end of my ad lib apology ahead of doing the story itself. The other reason I'm picking this story is because John is here, and this story was written for Silver Carrier. In fact, it was written for the website. I'll read the prologue I stuffed into this because it'll give you a better idea of what it was for. But yes, I thought this is a perfect story. One, because this is perhaps the most important point, very, very short. And two, links directly into John and my personal history of Doctor Who and how us reprobates enjoyed Doctor Who together. All right, let's see if I can find the story. It must be really close to the beginning. Yes, it is. Oh, brilliant. This story is only, I think, 2 pages long, 2 and a bit pages long. I mean, the prologue is almost bigger than the story. Okay. So let's read this properly. Shall I get into a relatively relaxed pose? Move the microphone slightly closer. Point it at my face. Possibly get my special Doctor Who amulet out as well. There we go. So, I will start with the preamble to the story. Regeneration X was written sometime from 1996 to 1997, certainly after the Doctor Who movie with Paul McGann was released, to judge from the opening description of the TARDIS in this story. Clearly the idea of new Doctors was playing upon my mind. By this time, John, Hugh and I had moved into a new flat, 180A McGuffey, Lewisham. While an improvement on the Nunhead horror, this basement flat was not without its quirks. We had an ongoing war with the mice, one of which I trapped in a toaster. It's possible they were seeking to capture one of us in order to dissect our brains. The mouse problem was resolved with the introduction of the rat. I have fond memories of Hugh taking on the rat in the kitchen bin, armed only with a broom handle. The battle was truly epic, and amazingly, both survived. It was during this challenging time that John asked me to write a short story to be placed on the brand new Silver Carrier website as exciting online content to draw in subscribers. And so, Regeneration X was born. The X in this case was to denote some unknown and unspecified future regeneration of the Doctor, not 10. It was not some uncanny Time Lord prediction of the future David Tennant Doctor. The title was also a play on words for Generation X, that famously authority-bucking and most punk of generations, to which Hugh, John and I just fell into the tail end. It was with this rebellious counterculture idea in mind that I formed this unconventional regeneration of the Doctor, unhealthy and potentially self-destructive habits and all. It seemed only natural to pair this Time Lord up with an 80s fitness freak companion. What better foil for this nihilistic, reckless Doctor? Again, early days and rough ideas, but hopefully there is something here to raise a smile. One final note. The reference to increasingly youthful future regenerations of the Doctor was, however, an uncanny prediction. And I'll add an extra line to that, up until, of course, the introduction of Peter Capaldi, where that trend suddenly got bucked. And also, again, to give you a little bit further context of age and immaturity, 1996 to 97 means that I was probably 22, maximum 23 years old. So probably 22 years old. And that's John and Hugh. They're a little bit older than me, but they're probably also, we're in the same year. So that we were all 22, maximum 23 years old. So that's how immature I was when writing and John was when commissioning. But let's get to the story itself.
Speak for yourself.
He's still there.
I was young, not immature.
Oh, good point. Good point. I was basically taking on the mantle of
sorry, I interrupt.
That's all right.
But
I
now
was
I'm very immature. Yeah, this is the
just shut up. I was carrying the immaturity for all three of us, I think. Anyway, Regeneration X. The large wicker armchair creaked as the doctor relaxed, his weight shifting to a more comfortable position. Smoke drifted around the main console room, now sparse and white, another change, and yet a step backward to the past. Odd that this young man should be so nostalgic. The doctor was, after all, in his 20s, or so it seemed to the casual observer. However, to look into his eyes, he could have been aged anywhere from 1 to 1 million, perhaps a fusion of all ages. Fully recovered now from his most recent regeneration, the long hair of his former incarnation had been retained, though he now cared to tie it back. He'd had time enough to pick out a new wardrobe, one which probably he would settle with, who knows. His outer garment was a long brown greatcoat, slightly worn, naturally. This partially concealed the embroidered waistcoat underneath, many colours in intricate patterns on a tan background. His shirt was white and voluminous, and I'll do that again. His shirt was white and voluminous, with large rounded collars that could be buttoned down, but were not. Long legs were crossed and encased in slightly flared slacks, their ends flowing over a robust pair of riding boots. The ensemble was completed with a silk scarf, coarsely fringed, red-covered, with black and blue paisley. His hand came away from his mouth, and he blew more smoke into the atmosphere. A harsh voice broke into his drugged contemplation. "Doctor, what are you doing?" it said with obvious shock. He leapt from his seat, wafting at the clouds of smoke like a naughty schoolboy, turning to face his companion as he did so. He saw the scowl on Kathy's face and glanced down at the all too obvious evidence in his left hand. He smiled and shrugged. Just reliving old young times, my dear," he said innocently. He had picked up Kathy in London during the 1980s. She was a tourist, an American, and as much the product of her environment as anyone he'd ever met. She was very into fitness. The means by which she had become his companion were long and convoluted. Was this can't even speak today. Was this not always so? She was proving to be as slow-witted and dull as someone of her background could be. What a prize! What a contrast! Oh, how he could play off her! If only he could persuade her out of that awful tracksuit and into something a little more fetching. "But they will kill you," she pronounced, her voice a trifle high and grating. Oh, what wonderful surety, and coupled with such ignorance. The doctor threw back his head and laughed. "Ha!" he exploded. "These will kill me? Oh, no, I think not." He shook his head, disbelievingly amused. "Rassilon's rod! Every time I regenerate, I get a completely new body. This," he said, waving the burning bundle in his hand, "is an indulgence I partake of only once or twice a century, if that. I really think I might be allowed that liberty." He finished with a gesture of his hands and head, which invited a response, while indicating he did not expect one. Kathy, however, would not have lost any opportunity to exercise her voice had it not been for the timely continuation of the doctor. He spun away from her, his coat flying outwards. "No matter how abused one regeneration is, how tortured, how battered, I pop up again, shiny and new." He spun once more to face her, arms raised in a parody of flamenco. "And have you seen the rate at which I've been going through bodies recently?" he asked. From the manner of his inquiry, he may have been discussing shoes rather than lives. "There simply isn't enough time for these to kill me," he finished, holding the burning end before him. The doctor then stubbed it out on one of the console's pristine panels. He frowned, a look of horror passing across his face. Hastily, he brushed the smouldering remains of the formerly immaculate surface and made soothing overtures. There, my beauty. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. Forgive me. He cooed comfortingly. Kathy at last found the opportunity to speak. With hands on hips, she addressed the distracted doctor. I have never heard you speak so, she began. Freely? The doctor interjected helpfully, looking up from his tender ministrations. Irresponsibly, she finished shortly. How could she possibly have formed such an image of him? You'd only picked her up a week ago, hardly time enough to know him, or to construct an accurate map of his speech patterns. He grinned broadly at her. Look at me, he said sharply. Look at me! I've never been so young! He paused and frowned, pondering for a second. Well, not since before my first regeneration. Think what it means, he said, grasping Kathy by the shoulders, standing very close, with a grin once more firmly in place. Dear child, what do you see? He asked with smiling eyes. A madman, she thought to herself. He swung round behind her, his head appearing by hers, still grinning. My selves have been marching, he began before stopping to consider his wording. Perhaps dropping might be more appropriate. Yes, dropping from old age towards youth. Now what's this? A feckless youth with the mighty power of a time machine. Think what mayhem, what damage, planned or unplanned, such a being could do. Just for a lark. Just a bit of fun. His companion's nervousness had been increasing during this tirade and was rapidly approaching terror. She would kick him where it hurts, given half a chance, and make a run for it. If he tries anything... The doctor wheeled around once more to face her. He shook his head, his expression now deadly serious. I'm the sum of all my parts, he said. He drew deeply from a cigarette. It appeared its appearance was a mystery. As next he spoke, a fog curled up from his mouth and around his face, giving him the look of a mystic or a demon. Kathy found neither image appealing. I am over 1,000 years old, he stated, and no matter the facade, no matter how the body runs, each step takes me further away. He dropped his right hand from her shoulder and turned and walked away. His arms were held up to either side, his hands spread wide. The fuming tube of tobacco had compounded its mystery and disappeared. He spun again to face her, 6 feet distant. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he bowed slightly towards her. Should I seek your approval, would you give it? He asked with feigned interest. Kathy pivoted on the balls of her feet and with an exasperated cry stormed out of the control room. The doctor shrugged, then brought his left hand out from behind his back. He took another drag. And that is the end of the story.
You were young when you wrote that.
Say again, old media guy?
You were young when you wrote that.
Oh, yeah. Very young, very foolish, very silly.
It has a rebellious spirit.
And the rebellious spirit. Yeah. But the doctor, that doctor, or interpretation of the doctor, definitely reflects the young, immature idiot that I was at the time. Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking the doctor smoking and hitting on a girl. It's like, that is something you write in your early 20s. And then it doesn't work out because, that's what happens most of the time. Because at that age, you don't realize it doesn't matter if you don't want a bad breakup, but it doesn't matter if you meet 20 women and decide, no, I'm not going to date them. You only need one good one. But at that age, you just don't know that. It's like, oh, she didn't like me. This is horrible. Screw up a little bit. You'll be fine. Glad you read it.
But yes. It's interesting that the rebellion is seen in terms of cigarette smoking. The first doctor smoked a pipe, of course, and no one worried too much about that at the time.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I referenced that later in my story that he smoked a pipe.
I think
wanted to
there
bring
was
it up.
a story somewhere about him having invented everlasting matches, but that wasn't in the TV show. It was somewhere else, but sort of stuck with me as an odd idea.
I
What
think
Doctor
the
Ridiculous powers?
Everlasting
time
matches.
meddler
That
came.
sounds like very dangerous. I
Yeah, I
can't
think the
get it to
time
go
meddler
out.
came up with something like that on Tinder.
Very good.
Sorry.
So, but yes, I'm glad I'm not that writer anymore. But it still
But I know what you
has
mean.
its amusing aspects.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. If you want to be an author and you're a young person and you say to yourself, I don't have anything to write about, I simply don't have the experience yet, you may be right. So write something else, or just write your juvenilia and keep it in a folder, and maybe only show it to a few people. Keep writing. Don't stop writing, but
Yeah,
it is possible you can become a better writer as you get older because you
exactly.
have the life experience.
That is the whole point of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't stay static and still. We don't stay this immature blob of knowing nothing. We do slowly over time, hopefully evolve. I mean, I can think of one particular showrunner who might be running it right now, who seems to have not progressed beyond the age of 12 in any of his writing, as far as I can see. But most of us hopefully do slowly gain experience and life experience and a tiny rice grain of wisdom perhaps along the way.
Yeah, if you get a chance, watch the trailer to Cry Macho, which is Clint Eastwood's new film. And his
Ooh.
character says something like, you spend all your life thinking you know something, and then you get to my age and realize you don't. And that sounds a bit harsh, perhaps, if you're young, to think, oh, it sucks. No matter how much I learn, I'll never know anything. Yeah, but it's having all of the life experience that allows you to say, sometimes I need to keep my mouth shut, not say anything. And that is actually more valuable than having a lot to say sometimes.
See, I knew we'd all just say nothing
to
then.
say that. I didn't realize there was a new Clint Eastwood movie. How old is he now?
He's about 90.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, respect.
Yeah, I'm glad he's still.
I don't know how he does
still
it. Most
working.
filmmakers do not get better with age, and here he is, 90, coming out with a film. It looks like it's going to correct all the mistakes of Rambo: Last Blood, which could have been a good film, but definitely was not. Because it's got a similar theme. An American has to go down to Mexico to rescue a kid who doesn't know his arse from his elbow, and then get the kid back without there being any problems. And of course, with Rambo, the idea is, I'm going to kill a bunch of people while I'm there because I'm Rambo. Yo. Whereas Clint Eastwood is like, I'm not going to kill anybody. I just want to get back alive. It's like, that's much more realistic.
Something I'm going to have to watch.
That's a good trailer, if nothing else.
So, what should we talk about now?
I think it's probably about my bedtime, to be honest.
I did wonder.
Yeah.
And I know that also our media guy has got a time constraint as well, don't you?
Yeah, I should go in the next 5 minutes, I think.
Right. Okay. Well, this seems like the perfect time to end the stream, since you both need to rush up. Well, you need to sleep, as do I. And old media guy has many important things to do. He's actually probably his local equivalent of Batman. Will probably just disappear into the night and right wrongs.
I don't think you're supposed to say that publicly.
Oh, you mean you're supposed to keep it secret, darn it. Although Batman does tend to give away his secret identity quite freely, it seems, all the time. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm really glad we managed to do this. I'm very particularly. I mean, I'm very glad old media guy managed to get his 2 story bits out, which is awesome. And I'm so glad, John. We need to get together in real life more.
Yeah, definitely.
Indeed, that's a plan. So we'll meet up in. You're still working in London?
Well, in theory, I am, but I've been working from home since last March, so
Yeah,
it kind of, yeah.
But
I'm in Brighton most of the time.
Yeah. Next time you're in London, let me know, or I could invade Brighton if you'd like.
We will make a plan.
Yes, That would be cool. Okay, well, on that note, I'm going to stop the stream then, which would be my normal elegant leaping towards the computer, which is recording us, and then pressing something. Bear with, everyone who's been watching, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the stories and fragments of stories. I certainly did. Certainly the ones that were not mine anyway. So, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye.
See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.